Hi everyone. So now that you are done writing your myth, before we officially turn it in, it's time to look for some common writing errors and hopefully fix them before you turn your myth in so that you don't end up losing points for something that you can fix. So I'm going to go through them one by one, and you will end up pausing and checking your entire myth for these errors and then making changes as needed. First one, forgetting to capitalize the first letter of a sentence. So here is an incorrect example. Then he ran towards the god with an angry look on his face. Notice the T at the beginning of the sentence is lowercase. It should not be. Here is the correct answer. Then he ran towards the god with an angry look on his face. Notice the T at the beginning of the sentence is capitalized. They should all be. First letter at the beginning of every sentence should always be capitalized. Take a moment to make sure you've done that in all of your sentences. Second error to look out for, forgetting to capitalize I when it is necessary. Here's an incorrect example. First, I'm going to tell you a story. I went to the store and I couldn't find what I wanted. Notice, every time I is used in this sentence, it is lowercase. It should not be. Here is the correct answer. First, I'm going to tell you a story. I went to the store and I couldn't find what I wanted. So make sure whenever I is standing alone or is connected to something using an apostrophe, just like in the word I'm, that it is uppercase. This is a common error we notice a lot of students make. So if you see any I's standing by themselves, lowercase, please fix them now. Next error, adding unnecessary spaces. This is when we see a lot, and I think it's just students confused as to where the spaces are supposed to be. So here is an incorrect answer. I used to like to go to the movies, but now I would rather stay home and watch Netflix. Notice how after the last word of their sentence, they're putting a space, then a period, then a space. That is not necessary. Here is the correct answer. I used to like to go to the movies, but now I would rather stay home and watch Netflix. Notice how the period is right next to that last letter. So when you finish a sentence, put the period right away. Do not put space. But after you put the period, before you start your next sentence, put one space there. Okay, so just a note, the punctuation, whether that's a period, an exclamation point, a question mark, or ellipses, which is the ... should come right after the last letter of the sentence. You only hit the space bar after you've added the punctuation, not before. Please check your myth for these mistakes now. Next one, not adding necessary spaces. So some of us put too many spaces, others don't put enough. So here's an example of an incorrect answer. She decided she didn't want to be mean to people anymore. She went and apologized to her friends. Notice how in between the sentences there is a period, but there's not a space after the period. So they're way too close together. So here's a correct answer. She decided she didn't want to be mean to people anymore. She went and apologized to her friends. Notice how that period is tucked in right next to the last letter. That's correct. But then after the period, they hit the space bar one time before continuing and writing their sentence. Please check your myth now for this error and fix it. Here's the next chunk of common errors, not quoting properly when writing dialogue. So there's a lot of different ways that we see students make mistakes on this. So I'm going to go through a chunk of them. Example 1, here is an incorrect way to do it. I want my powers back, shouted the god. There's something very important missing from there. So here is the correct answer. I want my powers back, shouted the god. Notice around what the God is saying, we have quotation marks. The quotation marks tell us this person is speaking and this is what they're saying. So you put a quotation around what they said. Example 2, incorrect. I want my powers back, shouted the God. This time they did put quotes, but they spaced them improperly. So here's the correct way that should be done. I want my powers back, shouted the God. Notice there is no space between the quotation and the first letter of the sentence, and there is no space between the punctuation and the quotation. That is how it should be. The only time you put a space is after the quotation before you write how someone said it and who said it. Example 3, an incorrect way of doing quoting and punctuation. I want my powers back, shouted the God. There is something really important missing from here, and this is something that we notice students doing all the time. They've got so many things right, but one super important thing is missing. Look at the correct answer. It says, I want my powers back, shouted the God. Now they have what's missing. They put the punctuation between what was said and who said it. So remember, what can go here is an exclamation point, a question mark, or a comma. What cannot go here between what was said and who said it is a period, because the sentence is not over here, right? So it could be a comma, an exclamation point, or a question mark, but not a period if it's followed by the dialogue tag. Please check your entire myth, all of your dialogue, for all of these errors. It might take some time, but it will be worth it. Please do that now. And here's the last one, students. Accidentally forget to use this really important tool, forgetting to use spell check. You have this awesome tool available that will catch errors. Use it. Okay, because we have to mark you down for misspelled words, for errors with grammar. So you want to make sure if you have this tool available to you that you use it. So here I have listed how to use spell check. First, you open your document. Then you click Tools at the top of the Google form. Then you click Spelling and Grammar. And from there you click Spelling and Grammar Check, and boom, it's going to point out errors and offer you corrections to accept or decline. So it's going to give you the option to accept the change or decline it. So here's a caution. Only accept corrections that make sense. If it's giving you something that makes no sense with your sentence, do not accept it. Okay, for instance, if it thinks you spelled a word wrong and it's trying to replace it with a word that makes no sense in your sentence, do not accept it, because then we're going to read your sentence and there's going to be a random word in there that makes no sense. Then we're going to mark you down because there's a random word in there that makes no sense. Real quick, on a document, let me show you how to do this. Just going to use my sample myth. But essentially, you go to the top, see here, Tools, Spelling and Grammar. Once you put your cursor over it, this will pop up. Just follow that to the right. Then click Spelling and Grammar Check. Once you do that, it's going to give you options that you can either accept or ignore. So make sure you're paying attention to what it's offering you, and if it's something you actually want to accept or something you need to ignore. Okay, so at this point, follow the steps, use Spelling and Grammar Check, and go through your entire document. Please do that now. Once you feel confident that you have checked for every error, you have read through your myth, the entire thing makes sense, you have looked for all of these common errors, then you may turn your myth in.